Today we've got another team to talk about. This time, there isn't going to be a lot of optimism here based on what they have in the roster. There's a couple things to like in Miami. There's a couple players to be excited about, but they're still trying to recover from the aftermath of the Jimmy Butler saga. And I think saga is an appropriate word here. Sometimes I or everyone overuses the word, but I feel like this qualifies as a saga, just based on the drama that happened between him with Pat Riley and also Jimmy Butler's prior history of dramatic exits. I think maybe this is just a new chapter in the Jimmy Butler saga, but in the Heat era, the saga is now over. I'm sure there will be some sort of epilogue where when he plays them in the future. But for now, Miami is trying to move on, trying to figure out what's next. And they have a couple pieces there, but not too many. There isn't the next piece, but we've seen Eric Spoelstra and Pat Riley build these teams that have a lot of success, even without that guy, like the true superstar. Like we saw them have success or be a competitive team, maybe not true success, but they were competitive after LeBron left to go back to Cleveland. We'll see if they can do it again. Before we dive into that, I want to remind you guys that BetOnline is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for all your sports betting action. We got baseball season in full swing. We've got the NHL and NBA playoffs going on. If you're looking to get in on the action tonight, we've got game 6 between the Thunder and the Nuggets, a dramatic end to game 5 in what has been, I'd say, the best series of round 2 so far. Wouldn't be shocked if this goes 7 games. OKC's favored by 5 on the road. We'll see what happens. But if you're looking to bet on that game, BetOnline is a great place to do that. You can even live bet. Maybe halfway through the game, you say, hey, I think I want to get in on this. BetOnline is a great place to do that. They have the largest selection of odds on everything from the MLB to the NHL to UFC. BetOnline remains the number one online source for all your sports wagering info. And then in between the games, you can head over to the BetOnline casino with all the top Vegas style games, including poker and a live casino. BetOnline, the game starts here. Okay, Miami, we are going to talk about the Heat. Typically speaking, over the last handful of seasons, they haven't been the most exciting or plentiful. Maybe plentiful is a good word here. Team. Maybe it's not. I'm just trying to make it work. But when you're looking for players to draft, there's not too many players in Miami that you get excited about entering a draft saying, hey, I definitely want to make sure I get the 8th player on their team, the 8th guy, the 3rd guy on the bench, 8th guy in the rotation. Not super interested in that typically because a lot of the production has come from the stars. There's been a couple players that have solid stretches, but we're not typically too excited about what's going on in Miami from a fantasy perspective. Maybe now that there's more opened up and there's going to be more players that are a little bit exciting, it's going to be interesting to see if they make moves this summer, or I guess what types of moves they make this summer. I think Pat Riley said something along the lines of they're not planning to just run it back with this team. As I'll continue to ramble and make sure I got that quote right, but they don't really have the pieces for it to make sense for them to just run it back entirely. Yeah, the quote was they probably won't run it back. So I think that's a pretty good job by me to get that pretty close. But what options do they have? What do they do here? So they have the 20th pick in this draft. That's from the Jimmy Butler trade. They don't have their own first. This is a solid draft. I think they could get a contributor at pick 20. We've seen what they can do with their recent picks. The last 4 picks in the top 20 are all on the roster. It's been Bam Adebayo, Tyler Herro, Jaime Jaquez, and Kel'el Ware. Jaquez was really good as a rookie, didn't do too much in year 2, but Miami has a history of drafting well recently. If you go back one more pick inside the top 20. It's Justice Winslow. We didn't really pan out, but seemed like he was going to it. I think we were excited about Justice Winslow at the time, but Miami has a history of drafting well, a recent history of drafting well. And then even when they don't, they have this history of taking these undrafted guys and getting them big contracts, and they usually aren't as good elsewhere. Not always. I think Max Strus has done a good job in Cleveland, but for the most part, you see players play well in Miami, get a contract elsewhere, and then it just doesn't work out the same way. As far as their future picks, they pretty much have most of them. They have a lottery protected first going to Charlotte in 2027 that will turn into an unprotected first in 2028. They don't really have any second round picks. They've traded all those away um, outside of their own in 2027. And then there's some sort of swap in 2026. But it's mostly just first round picks. But they do have a lot of their future picks. So if they did want to go all in on someone, they could if a team was interested in a ton of unprotected firsts and pick swaps. But also the factor there would be, does Miami have enough when they bring in this player for it to make sense for them to do that? Who could they bring in? I don't think Miami has the best package for Giannis. I think that it would be pretty surprising if Giannis was traded to a big market team in the East that, who would they trade? Is Kel'el Ware and firsts? Like that package doesn't compare to what San Antonio or Houston can offer. Probably isn't even the best trade package in the East, but to what those two teams out West can offer, probably going to be the two teams contending for Giannis. They have much earlier picks to offer. They have more young prospects to offer. So Giannis is probably off the table here. Kevin Durant, do you trade for a 37-year-old Kevin Durant? How much of your future are you willing to mortgage for him? And is Phoenix even just interested in those picks? Like, what other player do you have to part with? Is Phoenix's price going to be? I mean, is Andrew Wiggins and whatever other salary filler it takes, plus 5 or 3 unprotected firsts and four swaps or something like that? Is that worth bringing in KD for potentially 2 seasons? I don't know that it is. Is that something Pat Riley at 80 years old is willing to more willing to do? Potentially. I don't really see too many other players as of right now. Things change like that in the NBA. Don't really see too many other options here for players, stars that they could target. They're kind of going to be stuck in no man's land. Sure, they can take a hard tanking approach. I don't really see, as I mentioned, Pat Riley at his age wanting to go through a rebuild. Plus, have they ever truly gone through a rebuild since he's been there? I mean, they got T Wade at 5 in 2003. I think they had another year where they picked pretty early after a bad season in like 2008, 2007, 2008, somewhere around there. But past 15 years, this has just been a competitive team. I don't really see that changing. So they're going to try and win, in my mind. But how much of their future are they willing to mortgage? Are they going to try and just get better in the margins and say, hey, the East kind of stinks now, especially next season? I think that's going to be a factor for a lot of teams is it feels wide open. Like we're having, depending on how these series play out, the 4 and 3 seed in the Eastern Conference Finals. So how does that impact teams' decisions for next year? Or are they going to say, hey, the East is kind of wide open. Jason Tatum's hurt this year. Boston is maybe at this point has had to move off of Drew Holiday, Kristaps Porzingis for luxury tax purposes, and because there's no reason for them to go all in with Jason Tatum not available. So are some of these fringe play-in teams just a piece away from being in the NBA Finals next year? Potentially. the East is going to be so wide open next year. So I think we could see a lot of these Eastern Conference teams say, "Hey, this is an opportunity. Like let's see what we can make happen." And I think Miami's going to be one of those teams. You have Bam Adebayo, you have Tyler Hero, you have other solid pieces, but those are your two stars. Where is either an upside piece to trade or a center of the future that you can have either playing alongside Bam or behind Bam or just when Bam's not on the floor. Great piece. A couple other solid rotation players. Davion Mitchell kind of back after, I guess he wasn't, maybe not bounced back, but like wasn't really able to figure things out in Sacramento or Toronto aside from stretches, but seemed to really figure things out in Miami after he was traded there. Can that continue into next season? We'll see. What moves they make, I don't know, but it's going to impact how this team, how we approach this team in fantasy. Just looking at the roster for next year, a lot of the guys are still under contract. Duncan Robinson as a player option, there's no way he declines a $20 million player option. Just no way, because he's not going to get anywhere near that on the open market. He'll try the next year, but not going to happen. Davion Mitchell, free agent, offer he gets because of how he looked there. But maybe Miami's going to say, "We liked what you did, but you you're some other team liked it more, and now you're able to get a really nice contract. Them we're not willing to match that." So maybe he's gone. I would assume he's back. Alec Burks is a free agent. Uh, Keyshawn Johnson is has team option, and then Josh Christopher, Drew Smith, and Isaiah Stevens all were on two-way deals and are all restricted free agents. Not too much of an impact there. They still have Terry Rozier's contract, so maybe that paired with Andrew Wiggins and picks is able to land them a third all-star caliber player, and maybe that's enough to compete in the East. It's possible. I could see them saying, "Hey, we think we can win with this." And they do have other solid veterans, solid rotation pieces, a couple of younger players with upside. Nikola Jovic, haven't even mentioned him. I think he has a lot of upside. So there are pieces here in Miami. Not too many that I'm overly confident will be very good in fantasy next season. I think there's a couple upside, like pieces with upside. And really, when I say a couple, I do mean two. It's Ware and Jovic. So we'll see how this rotation shakes out after they make moves this summer or see what moves they're even able to make this summer. As far as the specific players, we can go ahead and get into that. Tyler Hero had a really good year this year. Made his first All Star game, 23.9 points, 5.2 rebounds, 5.5 assists. Again, first All Star game, that was really good. And it was a third round value, I believe, in 9 cat leagues. Did well in the play-in tournament. Didn't do too well in that series against the Cavs. But I mean, when Cleveland played much better in that series than they did against Indiana. But I think also the issue that the Heat are going to run into if they do from like, end up running things back to an extent, like the issue they're going to run into is that Tyler Hero isn't going to be able to carry an offense by himself against a really good defense in the playoffs. Bam is good. Andrew Wiggins is solid. But in reality, Tyler Hero would be the number one option. I don't think this is a massive knock on him because there's probably 5 to 10 players in the entire NBA that you can say are clear number one options that even when the defense in a playoff setting is fully focused on them, they can still have a lot of success and win games. That's not even to say win a championship. Every team needs at this in today's NBA, you can't win a championship with one scoring option. The defenses are too good and they're too keyed in on taking away your superstar. And we've still seen some of these superstars have big games. We've also seen a lot of these stars that never really struggle in the playoffs struggle. Nikola Jokic has alternated between these massive, unreal performances, but he's also really struggled at times in this series against the Thunder. He's had some games, like I think it was 3 games in a row shooting poorly. Jokic doesn't shoot poorly often. It takes a very good defense and a very intentional defense to slow him down. Donovan Mitchell's had some huge scoring performances, but he also had some inefficient performances. SGA's struggled more in this Denver series. And even in the first round series, even though they swept, he had some poor shooting performances. And I wouldn't say that Denver is an elite defensive team. I think that actually the narrative, which, I mean, narratives are what they are. That doesn't mean they're true, but the narrative is that, oh, Jokic is a terrible defender. He's an absolute traffic cone. Like, how is Denver supposed to stop anybody when they don't have elite defenders? But yet, in the postseason, they're able to slow down the guy who's probably going to win MVP and make him struggle at times. That isn't perfect. They aren't an elite defense, but playoff defenses are still able to make superstars struggle. So again, that's my long rant to say this. It's not a massive knock on Tyler Herro, but when your number 2 and 3 scoring option are Bam and Andrew Wiggins in the playoffs, defenses can key in on Tyler Herro, and he struggled. I think what he showed in the regular season was awesome. I think he's shown in the playoffs in the past that he is a player that can have a lot of success and can show up in the postseason. But it's different when you're the guy that defenses are focusing on. Where in the past, they were more focused on Jimmy Butler at times, for the most part. I'm trying to think Jimmy Butler has missed playoff games, but when it's just a different look. And it's a learning experience for Tyler Herro. I think he'll be better in the future, but I also think that you can't see what he did and say, oh, we feel good heading into next season. We'll just run it back with him as our number 1 option. I don't think you can feel good about that. I think having him as a number 2 scoring option is great. I think he can repeat, or at least get close to repeating this performance from this past season, where he also hit 3.3 threes per game and shot 47.2% from the floor, which was a dramatic improvement for him, the best mark of his career. And I think it's what helped him get up to being like a 3rd round guy in 9-cat leagues, was the fact that, his field goal percentage improved. His other numbers did as well, but I think the field goal percentage was kind of a big one, because the last 3 seasons before that, he was averaging 25 and 4 as opposed to 24, 5 and 5, but was shooting 45, 44, 44% from the floor as opposed to 47. So it's that type of jump that helps, because he didn't see a dramatic increase in shots. 17.9 per game this year. The last 3 years, it was 17.5, 16.6, 17. But he improved his efficiency, saw his usage uptick a little bit, which helped with the assists as well. Best season of his career, and I think he can continue to do that. I think they can continue to rely on him in the regular season, and things would be easier for him with another star. And say it is a scenario where they do trade for Kevin Durant, or a player of that caliber that you can say, hey, he's going to be our number 1 option. And I at this point, I don't know who that would be. But again, players become available when, like over the summer, or when we don't expect it. Maybe I'm not going to just keep throwing out hypotheticals. I'll throw out one more hypothetical because I can't resist. But nah, I'm not even going to do it. I'll do it. All right. So if Boston says, okay, we can't pay everyone, when there's no reason for us to pay everyone, maybe somebody from Boston becomes available. I don't really see a reason for Boston to trade a guy like Jaylen Brown, but if they are just fully set on, see, that doesn't even make sense for Boston to break things up with Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum just because Tatum's going to miss 1 year. Someone of that caliber, where it's like, okay, maybe they'll be our number 1 scoring option in the playoffs. I don't even like that comparison anymore. So I kind of wish I didn't say anything at all. I'm just going to stick with my KD comparison of a guy who's older that maybe is still going to be very, very good in the regular season, but you defer to a younger player like Tyler Herro a little bit more. early on. And then in the playoffs, that's when Kevin Durant would step up a little. Maybe that's the scenario. I think Tyler Hero can still be at least a top 50 player in 9 cat leagues next year. And I think as he ages, he'll continue to be that. Maybe he does develop to the point where he can be a number one option on a playoff team that can have some success. I don't really see him as a number one option on a championship team. And I don't think that's, again, a huge knock on him. But I think that's kind of the reality of where he is, who he is. Probably optimizes a number two scoring option with a really good defense behind him. But maybe in a couple years, as he develops, because I mean, he's only 25, like he still has some more developmental years before he hits his quote unquote prime. Maybe we can see him get to that point. I think that would be fun to see. Good for him. I think if we're talking specifically this the fantasy output, I'm not seeing dramatic improvements anywhere or the upside for it. And as a matter of fact, I think the more likely scenario, if we're talking about it, is his field goal percentage actually takes a hit. And this was more of a not a fluke season, but just a really, really good season. And he kind of regresses back to his norm, which is around 44, 45%. That's probably a more likely scenario. I'm not saying that's going to happen for sure, but I think just looking at statistical, like the likelihood of some of these stats, that's probably the most realistic scenario. But maybe this is just who he is now, and he's just taken this step and grown as a player. That's possible. We'll see this upcoming season, and again, it will depend on potentially some of the moves that they make this summer. All right, who else do we have? Of course, we have Bam Adebayo, who added a 3-point shot this year. Started off really poorly, was early on one of like the busts of the season, where it was like, oh gosh, if you drafted Bam, things are going well. But he ended up figuring things out and statistically had a really good season. But I think it just took him a while to get going. Averaged 18.1 points, 9.6 rebounds, 4.3 assists, 1.3 steals, 0.7 blocks, and 1 3-pointer. We got an entire 3-pointer per game from Bam Adebayo. Always kind of felt like he had that shooting upside because of his touch from the mid-range, and then kind of introduced it end of not this past season, the year before, and then really committed to it this year. 35.7%, 2.8 attempts per game. I don't think that's going to just continue to increase to the point where he is a high volume 3-point shooter making 2 per game. But I think if he's able to continue to be enough of a threat, which I think 3 attempts at 30, almost 36%, that's enough of a threat to open things up for the rest of the offense, open things up for him as a player, make teams kind of respect what he does as a shooter, and allows him to get to the basket a little bit better. I think that is a good. He's improved enough there. Maybe, sure, continuing to improve and shoot a higher percentage. That's cool, but not really relying on him to continue to hit 2 to 3, 4 threes per game, which he did do often at the end of last season. I just don't think that is the best outcome for him, or I guess the best scenario method of scoring for him. His field goal percentage was 48.2, excuse me, it was 48.5% this year, just in the regular season. First time he shot under 50% from the floor in his career. So it's kind of this balance of his field goal percentage is going to take a hit, which kind of stinks because he's always been very solid in that category. This is from a fantasy perspective, but he's also giving you a 3 per game. I think the commitment to it this year was a good thing because now teams are like, okay, he is a legitimate threat, especially down the stretch this year because he did continue to shoot more and more. I don't think he's necessarily going to become a consistent guy hitting 2 threes per game at 5 or 6 attempts. I don't see it as a smart play for them. Just looking at his numbers by month. By March, he was making, and this okay, March is a small sample size. He shot 4.6 per threes per game. March 3.1, February 3.2. So most of the year he was around 3 per game. The 5 games he played in April, he was at 4.6 per game. And also hit 57% of them. So that's not sustainable whatsoever. But I think the fact that he can space the floor, it's a good thing. Makes the defenses respect him. But if we're also like looking at his shooting percentage, that's what I was talking about. In October, only played 4 games, but averaged 11, 7.3, and 3. Shot 39.5% from the floor. Missed all of his threes, like 0%. November shot 43.4% from the floor. And then it started getting closer to 50% the rest of the season. In December and January, he shot 21.9% and 26.7% from 3. And I think he had other strong months as a shooter. Post All-Star break entirely, he was 44.8% at 3.2 attempts. I think the 3 attempts is something that will stick. That's fair. But I don't think he's going to shoot it at 45%. If he's shooting it at 45%, then maybe he does need to shoot more. But I don't think that that's necessarily going to be what he just defers to now is the 3-point shot. I don't really see that happening. But it's a good thing for his development. He's still one of the best defenders in the league, but he isn't a really good shot blocker for a center, and that's not terrible. He makes up for it with some steals, but it would be, I guess, nice to see him get back to being, I don't know, up to a block per game. Like his 0.7 blocks per game this year were his lowest mark since his rookie year. He averaged 0.6 and 19.8 minutes per game, but he's been closer to a block per game. It's not 0.7 isn't too much worse than what he's done, but comparing it is lower. So we'll see if he can get that back up. I don't really anticipate it. I think having more responsibility on the offensive end is also probably a bit of a factor there. No Jimmy Butler means that Bam is technically the number 2 scoring option. Even though Andrew Wiggins is there as well, but probably want Bam as your number 2 over Wiggins. So can't gamble as much. But Bam's still awesome. I think any team would be excited to trade for him. I don't think that any Miami fan would want to trade him. Maybe I'm wrong. I'm sure, as there is with every fan base, there's probably a small group of Heat fans that have been dying to trade Bam Adebayo for like years. I'm sure there is. So those are the 2 main pieces. Andrew Wiggins is Andrew Wiggins. I don't think that there's too much to dive into there. He's also been hard to predict the last few years because sometimes he had an awesome season with Golden State and then a terrible season with Golden State. And that's, of course, the year that I stuck my neck out for him and said, make sure you don't leave your draft without Andrew Wiggins. And in this past season, he was back to being kind of like average to above average. So who knows what type of Andrew Wiggins we're going to get next year. Nikola Jovic had a really good year this past season. Best of his career. Fractured his hand in February, didn't come back until basically the postseason. I think that would have been a really good opportunity for him to kind of take advantage of a team without a true identity. No Jimmy Butler. Andrew Wiggins missed some time. It would have been a great opportunity for him, but didn't get to take advantage. I see him being a large part of the rotation next year. He's still super young. Will be 22 in June. So he's one of their upside pieces there. He's showcased some like well-rounded stats, ability to do a little bit of everything. Just his numbers in this past season: 10.7 points, 3.9 rebounds, 2.8 assists, 0.8 steals, 0.3 blocks, 1.7 threes, and 25.1 minutes per game. But he did have like the blocks are probably, I guess, the weak category there. But he had some okay stretches for blocks, but not great. But mostly it's maybe he can get you a steal, he can space the floor, and then he's a good passer. Probably not a high volume passer, but can also get hot can score a lot, tall enough for rebound. So there's definitely potentially. I mean, Jimmy Butler loved him when he was there. I don't. I think he's worth hanging on to for both dynasty managers and Miami. Um, just coming off third season in the league, yeah, year 3 in the league, hasn't been able to. I mean, played 46 games this year, 46 games the year before, 15 games as a rookie. I don't remember his entire injury history off the top of my head, but I don't think that the first 2 years he was limited in games because of injury. I think he just didn't see the floor much. Um, so I think that now with Jimmy Butler gone and trying to figure things out, he becomes more important. So if he sticks around, larger part of the rotation, got to figure out how much upside this guy has, or maybe he trying to see if another team thinks he has upside, see if they can move on from him. Not see if they can move on from him, see what he's worth to potentially bring in a different piece to help them win now. Davion Mitchell, as I mentioned, was really good after was traded to the Heat. He averaged, I think those are his numbers from the full season, but just with Miami, he averaged 10.3 points, 2.7 rebounds, 5.3 assists, 1.4 steals, and 1.4 threes per game. Immediately was a starter when he first got traded to the Heat and played pretty well. Kind of tailed off his production a little bit, moved to a reserve role, and then was still really productive there. And then was awesome in the play-in tournament, especially at the end of the game against the Hawks. Watching him and Trae Young, quote unquote, go back and forth, but it was really just Davion Mitchell just destroying that matchup. He just really fit well with Heat culture. So it'll be interesting to see if they bring him back, how much he gets paid this summer, because I think there is still some upside there. So we'll see how things potentially play out. He's worth stashing, though. I will say is a definitive thing. I think the upside of what he looks like with the Heat makes him worth keeping an eye on. And then, of course, their rookie from this past season, Kel'el Ware, wasn't playing a significant role early on, but ended up becoming a starter. Is when that first happened, the numbers were awesome, and then it kind of just tailed off to become like closer to average. But you could see the upside and the potential of what he is, or I guess can be. In let's see, January averaged 13, 7, and a block and a half, 7 rebounds. February, 9.1 points, 10.5 rebounds. That was his best rebounding month. March, 10.2 points, 9.5 rebounds, a block and a half. He also averaged that in January when he averaged 13 points per game, hit 1.3 threes per game. So you can see the idea of this double threat that can also block shots and space the floor. Maybe not, again, an elite floor spacer, kind of like Bam, where he's like kind of an in-between thing. But if they're able to have lineups with two guys that, maybe Bam can, what makes Bam unique is his ability to defend every position, allowing Bam to spend more time guarding the perimeter with Ware behind him as a shot blocker, as a rebounder. And then on offense, having two bigs that can somewhat space the floor, maybe not at a high level, but can space the floor and occasionally knock down an open shot. Like that opens things up a lot for Miami's defense. I think Ware was one of the more intriguing prospects from this past class. And I think there were some people, I can't remember exactly where I had him on my board. This is probably about where I did. Maybe it was a teensy bit higher on him. Maybe I was lower on him. I don't fully remember. I remember liking him when I watched him play, but he is still a little skinny. But I think he's been able to be productive despite that. Not too concerned. So how does that, I guess, how does he continue to develop? I think year 2, I'm expecting good things, big things. I think he's one of the more intriguing prospects in Miami, but he prospect may not even be the right word because he's already kind of here, like he's producing. So should be good in redraft leagues next year. Definitely holds a lot of value in dynasty leagues. One more player that I'm probably not going to just dive into, but want to shout out, I guess maybe two more players, just to mention Jaime Jaquez. I think he's going to end up just being a solid role player, but it is kind of strange how much we saw him play as a rookie, not see him play much this past season. Maybe he plays more next year. We'll see. Not a great fantasy player, but when he's played a lot of minutes and had the ball a lot, then things tend to work out okay. Pell Larson also is worth mentioning. Didn't have great numbers, didn't play a significant role for most of the season, but he had some decent stretches. I think he's at least worth mentioning as a potential stash. But that's going to do it for this episode of the Young Man Squad Fantasy Basketball Podcast. Believe we'll have one more episode this week because today, we'll talk about the Grizzlies. That'll be the last episode for this week. So if you would appreciate it if you liked, commented, subscribed to this episode, no matter where you consume your podcast. You can give me a follow on Twitter to see all my content. You can check that out at NoRibbon22. Same thing on Blue Sky. But that's going to do it, and I will see you guys next time.